Hello, I'm Paula Bolton, co-founder of Lesbian Labour. Welcome to our Proud Lesbian series. During Pride Month, I'll be interviewing a wide range of lesbians to gather lesbian perspectives and to hear about lesbian lives in 2022. And for my 13th interview, we're going to talk to Maji, who is from Iran. Welcome.
Hello, Paula. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So what I'd be interested to hear to start off with is, can you talk about your life as a lesbian, coming out? What was that like? I cannot begin to imagine how that was, but I'll hand that to you.
Yes, actually, when I knew I was different from other girls, my sister, it was when I was a schoolgirl, maybe I was 10 years old, 11 years old. I didn't know about lesbianism or female homosexuality. I heard about male homosexuality, usually as sin like sodomy. They they talked about, and of course we had it in law. But about lesbianism, we never hear, but I noticed girls had interest in hetero romance, like reading books, watching films, and I had no interest in them. And always I was thinking emotionally, of course, at that time, about two imaginative girls when I was very young. And then one day there was an Iranian singer, a male singer, who was apparently homosexual, like people guess, because he didn't have these masculine traits. And my cousins were talking about him and whom he's like this. And I can say I had, because of all this negative attitude toward homosexuality, despite the fact that I accepted my my difference at the time. I didn't call it lesbianism, but because of my religious background, I had kind of guilt about it. And when they talked about this man and who he's a sinner and like freak of nature and this, so I didn't want to watch him. I was very, very young, maybe 10 or 11. And so it was a kind of what you call maybe homophobia. It was inside me, which was natural, but I never doubted that I wanted to be a lesbian, and never had interest in men. Then I was about 14 after some studying some primary sources of Islam. Of course, I was from a religious Muslim family, but I wasn't religious until I was 14. I became religious, and then there was a clash between my religion and homosexual act, of course, not identity, but homosexual act. So what I thought about my future, I said someday I will find a partner, but we restrict the relationship to be emotional only and non-sexual because of my faith. So even despite the fact that I was very religious at that time, like from 14 to around 20, then after that, gradually I lost my faith on Islam. It took a few years again. So I did some Islamic practices in early 20 years. So, but despite my religiousness, I never doubted that I wasn't a lesbian or I could become heterosexual, interested in men or marry as my religion prescribes for women. Then, but I think maybe because of my religiousness and in general because of my philosophy about valuing much like profound relationships rather than superficial feelings, I never actually desired another woman until my late 20s. And it's strange in my case, like I knew I had this potential, but in reality, I never met a woman who I could profoundly love, being in love until my early 20s, my late 20s. And at that time, I was 26 when I thought I really needed to meet other lesbians like me. Until then, I was looking for stuff related to lesbianism online, of course, since when I had access to internet, which was like around when I was 19. I remember the first things I looked for were related to lesbianism because I couldn't get this information somewhere else with all the censorship. And one thing I forgot to tell you about my childhood home, I was different to other girls. Like girls were reading romantic stuff, heterosexual, and I read Louisa May Alcott's Little Women when I was 12, and it was different because it was focused on 5 women, the mother and 4 sisters. Yeah. And despite the fact that they were from the same family, it was so emotional, like the relationship between Jo and Beth were like it's what they call now romantic friendship, which was common in the 19th century in North America.
Can I just ask, which of the sisters did you think you were most like?
Jo, the second one, which was based on Louisa's character herself, and the third one, Elizabeth Betts, who died young. These two, I remember I was 12, but for example, the physical touch between them, and I noticed them because I was lesbian, and I imagined them as lovers, despite the fact that they were sisters, but because I didn't have any other, I didn't know of any other lesbian couple. So I wrote fan fictions about them, focusing on their love relationship. And for example, in the first chapter, like from the first chapter when I was reading, I remember, for example, my cousins read this book, and my classmates, all were fascinated about Joe and Larry, the boy, the neighboring boy. But from the first chapter, these four sisters were together, talking to each other, waiting for their mom, and just these very fine details, like Joe's head was on Beth's lap, and she was caressing her, and all this, like very brief, but I noticed them and I could imagine more. Or in another chapter, both Joe and the oldest sister, Meg, came back home from work, and there were details about how Beth showing affection to Joe, not to Meg, like caressing her feet and this stuff. So I was so attracted to this book, which was different from any other book I had access to, of course, in my language, Persian, that I was really infatuated, first with Little Women, but immediately with its writer, because I read more about her. It was really difficult because we didn't have many Persian resources about her or translations of her other books, but I tried, like, actually I learned English this way. I never had a teacher for English, and at our schools, they just taught us a very simple English in like secondary school, not in primary school, because they didn't want people to learn foreign languages, so can have access to more resources. Like they just want to suppress people's access.
When you say people, was it people or was it just women?
People, for men, for boys.
And it's interesting that you've mentioned this, the power of those books to give you what it was that you needed, the absolute desert, literally the desert that you were in, and this was an oasis where.
Yes, and it's interesting that many years later, recently, I found a Russian lesbian, very young, she's around 20, 21 now, and online, and she said she had the same experience with Little Women, and like me, wrote fan fictions about Joe and Beth. So it's interesting because in Russia they also have this censorship problem.
Because one of the questions I've asked all the other interviewees is about lesbian representation, because obviously when you don't see yourself reflected, you know, there's no way of learning about your potential life. And we've been looking at how representation has been in this country over time, and has it increased, has it improved? And it's been interesting to see that the first response is this blank face, when I say lesbian representation, it's like they've all had to think really hard. And then I say about books, you know, and I mean, some women have been in the book world. Some of them are bookshop managers. One was sitting in a library when I interviewed her. But the power of words to create an entire world and to feed us makes me absolutely determined that we need more lesbian literature. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So I mean, that's such a wonderful anecdote from you. The power of that in a different language, in a country where you weren't even able to find the book in your language, you know. I wonder if Louisa M. Alcott knew the impact that she would have.
It's interesting because when she was older, like a couple of years before she died young, 55. She was famous then, very famous, maybe maybe the most famous fiction writer for young people, at least a woman writer in America then. And a journalist asked her why did she remain a spinster.
Oh.
And she replied so innocently, maybe, she said because she had fallen in love with pretty girls many times in her life, but never with a man. I guess she was a lesbian, like for example, this is one example. And of course, she was like a defender of Boston marriages. She wrote an article about it then, and she lived this kind of life, like Boston marriage, with her youngest sister, May, who was Amy in the book, and until Amy was about 36, but then Amy was 8 years younger than Louisa.
Right.
Then Amy went to Europe to study art, and there she met a very young man, much younger than herself, about 15 years, and they married. It's interesting that she asked permission from Louisa to marry him.
Wow.
And Louisa, of course, permitted her, but apparently she wasn't happy about it. But she didn't want to restrict her, yeah. And she got a daughter, Amy, May, and died 3 weeks after this because of some health complications.
Well, it's fascinating, but I want to bring us back to your story now. So we've got you've gone through this religious period where you'd come to this conclusion that you would possibly have a connection with someone, with a woman, but it wouldn't be of a sexual nature. And then, so what happens when you're in your late 20s then? We've got you as far as your late 20s.
I joined this, I looked, I was 26, I looked for other Iranian lesbians because all the time I was reading about them in English websites, like and I didn't have contact with anyone in Iran, and I didn't know anyone. Like maybe I knew they were in closet, but I doubt it. It wasn't very common in Iran, like really, really rare. In my generation, I'm 39 now, and the thing is, I looked and I found a dating website specifically for lesbians, but it was without photos, without real name, anything. And of course, we had to be careful about all this, and it was risky, like contacting with a government spy maybe instead of a real lesbian. But I took this risk because I really wanted to meet others and see how they feel, first of all, but also I really love to find a potential lover maybe through this website. So I joined with a false name, and I waited for them to contact me. Like I didn't go through profiles, which were only description, nothing more, no photos. So the woman who contacted me, I remember the first one, I wanted to go see her. Like we chatted several times and exchanged photos. She sent me several photos of herself and herself with other lesbians. So and they look like androgynous. So I could guess maybe she's a real lesbian, and I went and saw her, but it was like I had this fear of meeting a spy. And then I remember one of the first interactions, it was because I wrote in my profile about my education, and so it was a PhD student at the same university where I studied my bachelor's, and then actually I had a master's too, but she wanted to meet me. She said she's looking for someone like a graduate student, or like a graduate. And okay, she said, let's meet at the university. And it was really risky. So I was ambivalent about it. And I went there on time, but the thing is, I hesitated a little bit, like waited. I went to the exact location about 10 minutes late, and there wasn't anyone there. And of course, we didn't have each other's phone number. And I waited, I sat there. It was opposite of their department. So, and no one came, and I left after about 15 minutes. Then she wrote to me, she apologized, and she said she saw me through her window, but she didn't dare to come and meet me. Then she asked for another chance, and I rejected it because anyway, like I went there and she didn't come, and I was afraid then maybe she was a spy something, but it's interesting that about 2 years later, I found out that she was really a lesbian, and she continued chatting with me. But she wanted to be sure that I was genuine. And when she saw that I was writing a blog and I had other lesbian followers and friends, so she trusted me to
it's hard to imagine that the level of caution that you were having to exercise, and I'm really aware. I mean, I want to hear lots more, and I'm very aware of the time. So when you were studying, I imagine in your culture, were you living on campus? Were you living in dormitories with other women?
Yes.
How was that?
Yes, we had female only dorms, and all my, like when I studied my bachelor and then 2 masters in Iran, all the time I was living in female only dorms. And in one occasion, I had a crush on on the woman next door. I was a master's student and she was doing a PhD. And the thing is, it was just a small crush, but my roommate, who was a close friend, when she knew about it, she encouraged me to go further and tell her about my feelings and this, and like it was my roommates thinking that like she thought the other woman also showed feelings toward me, but it was from the other side, it was just her I think her interest in my knowledge, like she liked spending time with me, so and listening to this stuff. But anyway, it was a Valentine's, and my friend, my roommate, insisted going buying a present for her, and so I did it, and it was really risky. I called her on Valentine's Day. She didn't respond, and then the next day I wanted to give it up. But the thing is, I went with some, like, Valentine's chocolates, this hard and stuff. I just went at her door and wanted to share some with them, like she and her roommates. And then she asked me, who gave me those chocolates, and mentioned a woman who, like, apparently she thought this woman was in love with me, so probably gave me those chocolates. When she said this, I couldn't deny. So I said, I bought them for you, and there is a small present for you too, if you accept. And she was so excited. She hugged me and kissed me, like she kissed me several times on my face. And she said she can't believe that I've done this for her. She can't believe she's hearing this from me. She was so excited, like I was surprised because I thought she was straight, and then I asked her to let me get the present from my room, and it was late. It was around 11 at night, and we went to a room like it was TV room, because there shouldn't be someone at that time. So, and we spent over an hour there. Of course, she was so excited then, and so emotional. But the next day, I went back to my room. Of course, I was happy because I had this feeling, and it was the next day I went to her room, I knocked on her room, and there was her roommate too. She was extremely cold with me, and I was surprised. Apparently, like when she came back with all these things at night, her roommates knew about it, and she was so afraid of this. So what she did, like I saw, like she was she was avoiding me all the time, so I didn't even have a chance to speak with her, and her roommates were accompanying her everywhere like bodyguards, and not letting, like they were they were like so their looks were so hateful toward me. It was obvious, but the thing is, anyway, it was complicated, and it was a crush, of course. I found my lifetime love and soulmate, the only person I ever had relationship with, in a strange situation.
So I just want to stop you there. There's some weird crackly noise with the mic at the moment, so I don't know what's happening there.
How is it now? Is it okay?
That's better. So in the time that we've got left, tell me about your life partner. That's that story, and just so that this puts it into context, what were the subjects that you had your degrees, your PhD, your masters, etc.?
Yes,
just the subjects. Just tell me the subjects.
Okay, I studied my bachelor in pure mathematics, and then first master's in pure mathematics. I worked as a maths teacher at universities in Iran for a couple of years. Then I studied history of science. I also passed this master's degree, I also passed some extra modules in philosophy of science when I was doing my master's in maths. So, all of them were in Iran. And then I came here with European scholarship to do my master's in women's and gender studies. I did my dissertation for this on lesbian history, actually the role of sexology in the construction of modern lesbian identities in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And I love to continue doing my PhD. on lesbian history too. So
okay, and that's how you ended up in England
yes,
through your studying. Yes.
yes, and now I'm living here. I don't feel safe going back to my country because of like my activism, my feminist and lesbian activism and lesbianism have been exposed to the
So
authority.
tell me a bit about your activism.
Yes, I was mostly writing a blog under a pseudonym when I was in Iran in Persian about lesbian history and literature, and also my own fictions, historical fictions. For example, I've written fiction, like it's semi-biographical, semi-fictional story about Vita Sackville West and Violet Refuses. It's over 300 pages. I shared on my blogs part of it, so I can't go back to my country.
Okay, because you're known actually.
Yeah, and it's difficult, of course, like not being able to see my family. And
what is the position in Iran for homosexuals and lesbians?
Oh, the legal position, it's punishable by lashes and even death penalty. For lesbianism, if they find out like you've done a lesbian act, like sexual, it's punishable by 100 lashes up to 3 times. For the 4th time, if they arrest you, it's death penalty. But for lesbian activism, it can be death penalty even the first time you do it. And about sexual act, like for example, if they find a love letter to another woman from you, they infer from it that you have sexual relationships, and you are in trouble.
Well, that puts your story in the dormitory into a very stark
yes, because of this, like I think I was really brave. Like my lesbian friends said, you shouldn't do this at the dorm, and I also talked about lesbianism, like defending it in our small groups. And it was interesting that some women who I thought maybe because of their religious background, whatever, have extreme opposition to this. It was interesting as a person when they saw me and they knew I was a lesbian, so they knew me quite well, like I was roommate with them. So they could accept it. It was difficult for them believing it. Like some of them said they thought all homosexuals are promiscuous, I'm different, and all this. But one of my close friends, for her, it was so shocking. She couldn't believe me at all, despite the fact she knew that I studied this stuff, and I watched with her lesbian films, but she never thought I could be lesbian myself. Right. But after I assured her about this, she accepted it, and she was the same friend who encouraged me to buy present for.
There you go. So one of the things that we're told, and I just wanted you to verify this, is that the position of the Iranian government about transitioning.
Yes, this is interesting. In Iran, they do it as a conversion therapy for lesbians and gay men. It happened for me too. Like when I came out to my family, I was about 21. My father, it was interesting. My father and my mother, despite the fact that they are religious, they treated this so well, respectfully, and unlike many other lesbians, almost all Iranian families in my generation, like my lesbian friends, almost all of them were in the closet. The reason I came out early, also it was the fact that I didn't know any other lesbian. I didn't have a lover, so I didn't have anything to lose. Like when you are in relationship, you are afraid to tell your parents, to restrict your your meetings.
Yeah.
My mother didn't have any issue about it, and actually she said, for her, it's exactly the same thing as heterosexual relationship, even better. Like she says it's better because women understand each other better and are more emotional. But the only problem she has about it, because she's religious, like the sinfulness.
Yeah.
My father, it was interesting. He wasn't surprised at all, like he expected me to say this to him. And like with all the calmness, he said he knew from when I was a child, I was different. And like my father believes in this old sexologist theories that lesbianism is accompanied with gender non-conformity. So he said, since childhood you wanted to wear trousers, you wanted to play with boys, and you never had interest in marriage, so or men. I knew you were lesbian, but he told me, because he was so afraid about our family's reputation. He told me to keep it quiet, not telling relatives, especially because we are from a religious family. Like my grandfather was the clergy of our town, like the Islamic imam. But he suggested going to a psychologist to be sure that it's a real lesbianism and not like something, maybe I'm under influence of something else and can be changed. So it wasn't like he didn't force me, but he asked if I want to go. So I wanted to let them know that I'm really lesbian. I went one session. And it was interesting, this psychologist, a female psychologist, I went with my sister, and my sister brought along one photo of when I was 6 years, she was 5, and I was I had trousers and had a gun toy in my hand, and not very feminine, unlike my sister who was standing next to me, so like feminine and with a skirt. And this psychologist, after just 40 minutes speaking with me and my sister, decided that I was actually a transsexual, like a man's soul in a woman's body. And this was what she exactly said. And she said she can refer me for hormone therapy, and ultimately I should have sex reassignment surgery. It was despite the fact that throughout this session, I was telling her that I was so happy with my body, and I hate men's bodies, like I have repulsion toward it. But despite this, she wanted to tell me that I was actually a man. And this showed how easily they prescribe it as a conversion therapy for people like me.
People. Well, I mean, that's amazing to hear a first-hand story of that, and I'm really happy that for you that didn't happen. And I know that I don't want to hurry your last bit of story, because
yes,
it is a lovely story. But if you could tell us about the love story, and we've only got another five minutes, so I wonder if there's a potted version of the fact that you did find the love of your life. And I know that there's a sad ending, but
yes,
yeah.
I met her. I don't tell her name here. Yeah. My soulmate, it was interesting. Like I studied and mostly lived in Tehran, the capital. But my hometown was a very small town south of Iran, like just 25,000 people, the population. And I taught maths at two small universities there for 3 years. And I was so reserved, especially because I was in closet beside my family and a few relatives. I didn't want to communicate with people, and in general, I'm a reserved person. So they didn't know me, beside the fact that they knew I was a math teacher at university, and I was popular among my students. Then one thing happened. I've got an academic award, like national award, and I was in the news about it. More people knew about me. I used to go, like sometimes I talked, like I was a speaker about mostly women's history, women's studies, this stuff, at a cultural center there. But this time, when I was speaking, it was like shortly after this award. So more people came, and among them was my soulmate. I first met her there, and it was interesting because I was almost 29 there then, and thought I will never meet someone I can really love. And she was so excited to meet me because she didn't know any lesbian. She was 23 then, and she didn't think that it can be a thing around her. but during my presentation, I talked about lesbian archives and how they suppress them in the West at the libraries. It was just a short mention, but and it was a bit really brave of me to say this and regret this fact, but she knew, and of course it's kind of like, of course, I was gender non-conforming and different. So she came to me after the talk, and she was so excited. Of course, she first came to me because of her interest in philosophy and history of science, and the award was related to this field. But then she found something even more interesting. And the same evening, she trusted me to tell me that, like she said, she's kind of like, she didn't say bisexual, but she said she doesn't care about people's sex. She told me, it was interesting, she said she never actually fancied someone or had relationship with anyone, man or woman, but she thinks she has the potential for both. But it was interesting. First, we had a strong romantic feelings, so we kissed each other 6 weeks after first meeting, and during the 6 weeks we were seeing each other every day. Even she stayed with me many nights, and but then I told her to slow down, because both of us wanted to gradually grow in love rather than falling and not being sure. So and our relationship became gradually stronger and stronger.
And how long were you together?
6 years, until that tragic accident. And it was so sad, of course, and especially because our relationship was in closet. So
and was it in did it take place in Iran, or were you already in England? Was part of it long distance as well?
The last 4 months was long distance, so unfortunately I didn't have opportunity to go to the funeral, and nobody waited for me. Like they thought of me as her best friend and no more. And it's so tragic. And I really I love to be in contact with her loved ones, her family, and to be recognized as part of them. But unfortunately,
that wasn't to be.
No, it's difficult. I'm trying to rebuild my life. It's been really difficult for me. Like, it shattered my life, like over 5 years since it happened. I was a very happy, motivated person. So I had moments of like depression and long time depression, but I'm rebuilding my life now, and finding ways to honor her
memory
and the love we shared together.
Well, it's a beautiful love, and I know that you, because of the brevity here, I mean, it would be nice to have a session where we talk about that in some more depth.
Maybe we can have it.
Nice.
Yeah, that would be great.
But I'm aware I'm aware we need to round up. And I'd just like to say, Maji, it's been lovely to hear this absolute conviction from the very word go of the beauty of lesbian love.
Yes.
You've never once doubted that, and the fact that you found your soulmate and you had those precious years together.
And it was strange. I found it in a small town somewhere like remote. I never thought another lesbian would be there. And she was just living about 3-4 minutes walk from my home, like we were neighbors. And I was looking
far
everywhere
away
else for a soulmate, and I found her there.
Well,
like
there you go. And
it was like those 6 years, of course, part of it friendship, part of it more, were the best years of my life.
Yeah. And it just shows that lesbians are everywhere, under the stones. Just look.
Yes, it was really like I was surprised. And the first evening she told me about this, and yes, that story is really, really interesting. I love to talk about it in more detail.
Okay, but very, very, very good of you to share your life there. And it's interesting because with this series, you know, you are one of the proudest examples of a lesbian I know. And if anybody did want to find out more about what you think, your amazing mind and these fascinating, you know, you do have several groups, don't you, about lesbian history, Sapphic
Yes, actually it's Sapphic Historical and Archaeological Society. It has about 2,000 members. And it's for all women. Another one for lesbians, celebrating Sapphic romance.
Yes.
I'm also a fan of Xena, Warrior Princess, so I have a group about them. Like just for
several of them.
Platform.
So
there is a bereavement group for lesbians too,
a bereavement
like a small group.
Okay, so if anybody listening was interested, do get in touch with me to ask to be put in touch with Maji, and I can assure you there's fun to be had in those very unique spaces that you've created for other lesbians on the net there. So thank you very much, Maji.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.